and I can just
It's either too high.
readjust. Riley. June 10th, so just a little over 2 months old. Very cute. I'll show you a picture.
You only have one, I'm sure.
Judy, would you do the land acknowledgement? Thank you.
Yes. Okay. I'll make mentions.
Usually it says it's recording.
I don't know, do we have any audio? So, Elliot or Spencer, can you guys say something on your end?
1 second.
Both of you are muted.
Hello,
Yeah, we don't have any
Have
audio.
the audio
can
connected.
you hear me at all?
It looks like it's silenced.
Bueller.
There we go, there we go. Okay,
No, it's.
all right, welcome, guys.
Can edit that out, right?
All right, I'm gonna call the August 13th, 2025 meeting of the Lacey Planning Commission to order. Roll call, the only member missing tonight is Tanya Moore. Everybody else is here. Thank you, everybody. Judy, would you please read the land acknowledgement?
Yes. We, the city of Lacey, are on the ancestral land of the tribal people of the Treaty of Medicine Creek, including the Nisqually Indian Tribe and Squaxin Island Tribe. We acknowledge and remember those tribal people not recognized today who were absorbed or relocated into other tribes for survival. We recognize the ancestors and their descendants who are still here. We recognize and respect the tribal people of the Treaty of Medicine Creek as the traditional stewards of this land since time immemorial, and their role today in taking care of these lands in perpetuity. We recognize and have the responsibility to call attention to the histories of dispossession, forced removal, and abridged treaty rights that allowed our nation, state, and city to develop as they have today. We recommend that community members read the Medicine Creek Treaty of 1854.
Thank you. All right, I would be looking for a motion or amendments to the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Robert and Gail. Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve tonight's agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, everybody have a chance to look at the July 23 minutes? So I'd be looking for a motion and a second on that.
So moved.
Second.
Judy and Kirian, all right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the July 23 minutes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Awesome, thank you. We don't have any members of the public here. I don't see any members of the public online. Okay, any commission members reports tonight? We'll start with Elliot or Spencer.
None for me.
Okay, anybody in the room? Yeah, Kirian.
Yeah, I made it out to the Lacey Night Market, and so that was just absolutely amazing to see how much of the community. So I went to the event where people were out, I think, was it to get feedback for the comp plan, right?
Yeah.
And so it was amazing to see such a huge crowd there, and then I had to go the next time because it was so amazing. It's
Nice.
good, trying new foods and being with community, so it's really a blessing that we have that in Lacey.
It is. Anybody else? Awesome. Any department report?
No department report tonight?
Okay. We do not have a public hearing. We do not have new business, but we've got our old friend Hans with us. So Hans, you're gonna update us.
I am. I'm actually gonna do more of a workshop style meeting this evening. But in preparation for that, I'm gonna see if I can bring up our feedback that we've received.
Yeah, well, Hans is doing that. Maybe I'll kind of set this up a little bit. So, you know, at your last meeting, which was a very short meeting, we talked about what the, outreach we'd been doing in July. And, kind of said, we'll come back and give you the kind of the full download at the next meeting. And so that's what we're here tonight to do. Obviously, you have 50+ pages of comments in your packet. So as a part of that outreach, we basically, we got the full export of all of those comments, which you've had the ability to look at. And we've got a few tonight that we want to highlight that will precipitate some possible changes, amendments, not major things, but things we want the planning commission to weigh in on. So Hans will go through that here tonight. And then as well, we'll leave some space at the end. There'll be plenty of opportunity at the end to discuss any comments that you would like that maybe we didn't touch. So if there was anything that kind of sparked your interest as you were going through these comments, let us know and we'll leave plenty of space to discuss those as well. So a little additional background, we were at the council meeting last night. We gave them essentially the presentation that we gave you a couple weeks ago with what we've been doing in July, and we started kind of priming the pump a little bit with them for this review as well. So procedurally, you're getting kind of the first crack at the review of the comments, kind of going through the major topics, and then we will be back to the council on September 9th to go through this with them as well. And so, not only do we want to highlight the things that we're going to go through and what the staff identified, but we also want to touch bases with them as far as anything else that the planning commission has kind of identified along the way so that the council is aware of this. And ultimately, this is information that will be populating our comprehensive plan website that we're creating. So our comprehensive plan, it's a reminder, is going to be a website. And so, we're getting closer every day to launching this, and it's kind of final draft form that will be ultimately part of the public hearing that will be moving forward to the planning commission and ultimately final adoption to the council by the end of this year. So we've got a short window and trying to get all the work done here to launch that. I'm not exactly sure. At this point, we've got some placeholder calendar type things on your schedule, but at this point, those things might need to shift a little bit, depending on some of the additional review that's needed of some of the materials, some of the goals and policies, some of the website work that's done. So stay tuned. There's going to be obviously more to come on that final website and your review of that. But the main thing is getting these goals and policies right. So that's why Hans is here tonight to go through these with you.
All right, with that, we sent you guys as part of your packet, quite a hefty list of comments. So since we concluded our outreach, to really today even, we've collectively as staff been running through our respective different components of it. We broke it out into different elements and different areas, and we've all been kind of reviewing the feedback that was received and categorizing it based on a range of different categories, and I'll actually show you. So in your attachment.
You guys see that okay?
Let me see if I can actually get to, and I'll read them.
You can see it on your own.
Yeah.
So we took all this information, and then the first pass was really kind of categorizing it into a range of different categories. Those categories include things like reviewed, no further action needed. So it's a lot of times there's just like a comment of support or some other type of feedback that doesn't necessarily warrant direct text changes, but is something that can factor into the review process. And then we also had a category that was existing goal or policy may need revision. So the comment was specific to a goal or policy that we don't necessarily need to do a wholesale change to, but maybe there's a word or two within there that could be updated or added or tweaked. That's what that was. And then we had a category that was new goal or policy may be needed. So whatever the comment is really isn't captured even partially within the existing language of our goals and policies. So that was another one. And then we also had addressed within another section or element. So there was some cross comment taking place. So sometimes we would provide a transportation related comment in our economic development chapter. So it was just a little bit of shuffling to make sure that everybody was addressing the subjects that they were kind of the experts in. So that was the first go of it. And then from there, we also created kind of a notes column with any kind of reminders or additional information or what it's in reference to, both for staff, but then also to clue you guys into what we're looking at the same time. In the attachment, there's also a link. So that link that's live on every single one of those comments actually goes back to the Conveya while the Conveo is no longer accepting feedback, it is still live and public and people can review it, see the comments, see the draft language that's out there. So that's another way that you guys can actually kind of see what was provided as far as feedback and then link directly to where it is within the workshop that we hosted through July. And then from all of that, we then took it a step further and kind of created, so looking specifically at really existing goal or policy may need revisions and new goal or policy may be needed, looking at those two specifically. We categorized those into two different buckets. Some of them were comments along the lines of include cycling or rolling as part of the walking statement of this policy, which arguably doesn't really change the intent or the meaning behind that goal or policy, but it is an additional change. Those we're not gonna really be discussing unless you guys want to as part of this evening. There's just quite a few of those that fell into that category. So yes, we're changing the language, but we're not changing the intent or meaning behind it. And then the other group that we're hoping to chat with you guys more specifically on this evening, we had about 15 categories or subject areas that felt like they warranted some additional discussion. So I really am just gonna kind of work through these on the screen. And it is intended to be kind of open discussion format. We don't need to come up with a new language or the exact wording of things, but we're just hoping to get your feedback on it generally. And then from there, as staff will take that feedback and work that into the goals and policies where appropriate. Okay. Any questions on any of that so far? And then at the end of that, we will have a section of time where if there's any other goals or policies that you guys noticed as part of your review that we didn't address or you'd like to discuss in greater detail, we'd be happy to do that as well. Okay. So the first category, and this is definitely just kind of how we organize things. So it's a little creating it as we go here, but category one had to do a lot with biking and protected sidewalks and bike lanes and multimodal forms of non-vehicle centric infrastructure. That has been something that we've heard since the beginning in July of 2024 onward. It's one of those defining key community priorities that we heard is actually aligns really cleanly with kind of the top priority from the community that we need more of that style of infrastructure within the community. And we actually had similar or related comments to do with that subject in our economic development element, our greenhouse gas emissions element, our land use element, definitely our transportation element. I think, yeah, so really it showed up in a lot of places and it continues to show up throughout this process. So we do have some language within our draft goals and policies currently that does speak to that, does address that, but the fact that we're still getting a healthy amount of comments around that, we wanted to check in with you guys, look at what we have currently written in there, see if we're missing things, see if there's more that's needed, see what any changes that might be necessary. So in these ones, I don't know that I'm gonna read all of this, but we have examples of bikeable, protected bike lanes, neighborhoods, including sidewalks, specifically older neighborhoods. So there were some comments about older neighborhoods being left out. A lot of the language is oriented towards new development, so making sure that it's applied community-wide. Pedestrian activated lights, that was another one, painted crosswalks. So all of those, yeah, I did copy over some what we have as far as draft goals and policies, and then in the red, I'm sorry, that's very small. We have some additional language recommendations in the draft language column there. So the first two are pretty simple. There was one request that showed up a lot. That was anytime you're referencing walking, also reference biking or something of that nature. We've traditionally used rollable because it encompasses more types of transportation, whether it's a scooter or some kind of other electric powered device or bike. It kind of is a catch-all for that.
Could also be a wheelchair.
Wheelchair, stroller, other things on wheels. So that was one, and that's policy in our economic development section, actually E4. sure anybody wants to track along.
So the only word that we've added there is the word rollable, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
Right, so that's kind of.
Okay.
Most of the time, that would fall into the category of we're not really bringing that kind of thing to you guys. But since it's related to this topic that keeps showing up, it's just an easy example of what that looks like. And then also, this is greenhouse, emissions, 5D. We added the red language there, so most recently adopted Lacey pedestrian and bicycle plan. So there were some concerns about not including enough language, just generally speaking. So one of the existing goals within the draft language is that it's in alignment with our already previously adopted pedestrian and bicycle plan. So while we're not listing everything that's in the pedestrian and bicycle plan, by adopting that, that is effectively a part of this update. So there were some concerns around that, but they're just strengthening that language there to really reiterate that that is in fact what's taking place. So even though it's not word for word the same, it is there. And then getting into more of the transportation element, because that's really where a lot of this plays out and actually really is more specifically addressed in these other elements. It's kind of adjacently referenced, but this is where we actually get into the kind of nuts and bolts of it. So we actually have 3 different goals and or policies that kind of speak directly to multimodal forms of transportation, human powered forms of transportation. But T1A, T2A, and T2G are all policies within the transportation element that speak to this. I do have them copied up there. I can read them if that's what we want to be. But generally speaking, is there feedback that you guys have on that topic for us? Is there gaps that you think that are currently out there that we're missing? Is there things that we should be adding? Any thoughts on that?
I like the rollable addition. Yeah.
Yeah, I do too. I think it's real easy when you're doing these comp plans, you could get very specific. But I think the development community likes it to be a little bit more open, especially with the span of time between the times that we're
Yeah.
actually
Changing
revising
things.
these, right?
Yeah.
There might be a new mode of transportation between now and then, like, right, that we.
Exactly.
Haven't thrown in hoverable or.
Yeah, right,
Right.
Preferable, yeah.
Yeah, I think rollable is as close as you're gonna get.
Yeah.
Specific.
Yeah, I think it's hard to articulate everything to like, I do feel like any word, someone's gonna say like, well, what does that mean? Like, personally, yeah, rollables, it's more inclusive as far as like, it makes me think of more things, but it doesn't immediately think of bike lane. In my brain, I have to like take a moment and be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. It kind of falls into the
Right.
line, so. I think it's more inclusive than it was, and that's a step in the right direction.
I imagine that rollable doesn't really indicate bike lane intentions. Because, I mean, I understand that the laws regarding bicycling is that you can bicycle on bike lanes, but you can also bicycle on sidewalks, and that you have the same rights and responsibilities on the sidewalks as a pedestrian on foot, with a bicycle. But anyway, so yeah, I was thinking about that because I was wondering why avoid bikeable? Well, that might indicate that you intend to have bike lanes and everywhere that's walkable, which I don't think is the intention, right? So I don't know. Anyway, I like the rollable. I thought that was a
Yeah,
good
I
idea.
think that's a good generic term.
Do you want to go into this one a little bit more detail that we've got here on the screen? I just want to, so we got the draft language. We also have this issue of pedestrian activated lights for crossing arterials. And so this is things, I would assume that they mean more than that. They mean, crossings and those kinds of things. And so, this one is one where, do you want to go to now that we've started on this one? So we've got some existing transportation policies that would support that. The question is, I think at this point, do we need anything specific in here? I think, Jeff, you mentioned like we like to stay kind of broad and high level. Obviously those things are looked at a time that we do, like a developer does a development. Do they need to pay for a safe crossing? Is it something we do at the time of a capital project? Does the city need to provide the safe crossing? So maybe this would be a good opportunity to talk about that as well, is that, we've got those three policies there on the screen that would kind of cover this, but it, you know, things like our design standards, things like you consider at the time of a capital project, but do we need more, do we need anything more solid at this point, I guess is the question on this one. Am I capturing that right?
Yeah, there's also one other thing I would add. So the transportation element is unique in the sense that while it does have goals and policies, just like all the other chapters, it also has a section that talks about transportation projects that have been identified or recommended for the next planning period. So one of the things that we actually included as a note here, add to transportation project list, is a recommendation based on this feedback that while our goals and policies generally seem to capture a lot of the feedback that we're seeing, there is still that need or priority to really kind of ensure that walkable and bikeable areas are factored into our planning decisions moving forward. So one of the recommendations is actually add, so this comment had to do with pedestrian activated lights, but add kind of a crossing style analysis as part of our project list moving forward to kind of look at those kind of more activity intersections and high crossing locations to see if they're being adequately serviced, or the infrastructure is there to kind of have people safely cross these intersections or locations. So that's another outcome of this type of process that doesn't necessarily show up in the goals and policies, but is part of this update.
So I think honestly, our comp plan, and especially with the revisions, are very, very pedestrian friendly. I think to mandate something like pedestrian activated crossings, first of all, they're expensive to install, but the other thing is then that eliminates innovation in design, that you could create safe crossings without having the flashing lights and such. And, you know, one of the things that guides my opinion is I remember years and years and years ago, I worked at the hospital, St. Pete's, and in the middle of this 35-foot long wall was an exit sign. This was a wall. And at that time, there was a state law that said in a public building, once you installed an exit sign, it could never be removed.
Brilliant.
So that was an exit at one point, but it had gotten remodeled. But state law did not allow them to remove that sign. So in the middle of this wall was an exit sign. And we don't want to drill ourselves into a hole where we have a ridiculous regulation. Especially as, you know, these developers are getting very creative and innovative because they want to make their developments aesthetically pleasing, commercial and residential. And so they're gonna, if we say you need to make this pedestrian friendly, they're gonna figure out how to do that.
So just, so say, consider pedestrian, not friendliness, but consider pedestrian crossing safety.
Pedestrian passage.
So let's look at T2G. I think it's covered under there. Use design standards. So that would be design standards that would be implemented at the time of new development or when the city does a capital project, including traffic calming features as an integral part of the design of new developments and pedestrian crossings where appropriate.
Yeah, fine.
Yeah,
Okay,
I think that's perfect.
good.
One of
If
the
it
things,
doesn't say pedestrian activated flashing light,
Right.
blah, blah, blah.
And there's different treatments. I mean, when you get into transportation engineering, you know, based on
lot
the
of stuff.
volume of the cars, the volume of traffic, the you know, the land uses on either side of the crossing, the speed of the traffic, you know, that kind of thing. It all factors into what is the appropriate countermeasures to be installed. Sometimes flashing beacons, like if you were to put in a mid-block crossing along Martin Way or College Street or something like that would be, you know, super appropriate. But to put that, you know, on your own neighborhood street would be overkill, right?
Right.
So I think at this time, you know, at this point, it's a high level policy kind of covers this. And, you know, it's probably something that's best, you know, in our development guidelines or something like that, where we have standards for these types of countermeasures.
Spencer.
I agree with what Ryan was saying. I think we've addressed it well and we've responded to the community's request for pedestrian friendly infrastructure.
Yep. Thank you.
all right.
Consideration of, not
Yes.
necessarily putting it in, but consideration of.
So I think that I will say one other thing about this, just because it is a good example of what the comprehensive plan's role is versus design regulations and other codes that it references. So the comprehensive plan really is that kind of big umbrella discussion item that really kind of guides and says, look at these things. And then it's the design regulations or the zoning code or what other implementation language that we have in our other guiding documents that really is the stuff that gets specific into like the flashing beacons or what have you. So when we get comments like this is kind of the comprehensive plan version of the response to that. So it's a good example there, but.
Yeah, the comp plan should be the target, not the means to get there.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so the next section we're moving into, we received a good number of comments both about tree cover preservation and then more specifically as it relates to I want to make sure that this is all grouped in the same section. Yeah, so power line corridors. So we got some comments on both ends of that spectrum. But we got some feedback from PSC specifically. We got some feedback from the master builders, and we also got some feedback from community members in general that are a fan of trees, understandably. So all of those kind of converge around a couple different goals and policies. Some in land use, some in resiliency, some in utilities, but all kind of speak to how we address trees and tree canopy and tree cover, and how much of an emphasis we should put on trees balanced with kind of more intensive infrastructure and what that looks like in the comprehensive plan as far as what language we use to describe those situations and environments. So again, I might yeah, so goal in our utility section, goal 9 actually states regulate vegetation management by utilities. And then it has a couple different sub policies under there, but to give you an idea of the level of detail that we get currently within the draft and the language that we use. Yeah, goal 12A in our land use. Explore public-private partnerships, proactively solicit development partners and employ public-private partnerships to implement priority projects. So that one, there was a comment around tree canopies that was associated with that. So I don't know if that's the perfect fit, but again, kind of adjacent topics that can relate to these things. And then where's trying to get to the PSC was the one that provided a pretty hefty comment about that.
Is that blue one there?
Yeah, there we go. Let's see if I can show all of it without it getting cut off here. Apologies. So PSC says basically, while they appreciate the language that's in our code, they're also not legally bound by it. So that said, they did provide some draft language that they would like to see included as part of that language. Which is the bold section here, and I can read that. It says encourage directional pruning of trees and phased replacement of improperly located vegetation in the right of way. Perform pruning and trimming of trees in accordance with professional arboriculture specifications and standards in recognition of utility clearing standards. So that's language that they've asked for us to put within our comprehensive plan. And then we have other feedback as well. I think WDFW also provided some feedback on the other end of that spectrum about how to intentionally plant trees and how to underground power lines and things like that. So I guess, I don't know, if any of you have any official thoughts? Have you read any of this? Or
I think that language they're suggesting actually belongs in a design ordinance, not a comp plan. Because that's more of a how to rather than a goal.
Mhm.
You know, I think part of the issue with a lot of these comments is people see this as the comp plan. So they think if it's not comprehensive of everything they might
Right.
want to include, you're not gonna do anything about it, or you're intentionally leaving it out or whatever. And I don't know, I mean, it is a bad name for a document that is, you know, an overarching and comprehensive document, but not a detailed document that talks about methods and procedures. So it's, you know, I think people are trying their very best to comment, but it's not it is, you're right, it's policy, it's practice that doesn't get into this plan. So I don't know how to convey that to people without making them angry about, but you didn't talk about trees.
Yeah,
Or you didn't talk about this, or you.
right, Elliot?
I guess it brings up the question of who pays for it too, doesn't it?
Well, that's certainly part of it, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think what that suggested language in PSC is more of what should be in an instruction manual, not a guidebook. And the comp plan is supposed to be more of a guidebook.
Yeah, and maybe I can kind of rephrase this a little bit, and maybe this will help with some of the discussion too, is that in our comp plan now, which this is existing language that we're bringing over, is that basically, the city has had a difficult time in regulating the utilities, especially Puget Sound Energy, and what they do in the right of way around trees.
Mhm.
And basically, the community priority established in previous comp plans are that trees are the priority, not the utility. And so the question is, at this point, especially given that, we're electrifying, we're doing a lot of things from a resilient standpoint to do that kind of stuff, is that still the number one priority, trees, or should we really let the utility do what they want to do in favor of being more kind of resilient from, like, well, if the power goes out, then you got nothing because you're 100% electric now, right? So you weaned yourself off natural gas and all of a sudden you're 100% electric. So, should we say, okay, at this point, we want to make sure that everybody can, we're not causing damage to the utilities by trees falling on them and those kinds of things. And so, maybe that could help kind of with some of the discussion, is like, should we still prioritize trees first? Or are we at the point now where we need to start transitioning and thinking about, okay, no, we need to actually, be more resilient as a community and prioritize the electrical service first, that's kind of, so you kind of have the city saying, well, trees are the priority, and PSC saying, well, the utility is the priority. And so we need to really, it's the city that leads that discussion. And so we need to kind of figure out and start that discussion as far as where we want to go with
Sorry,
that.
Jennifer?
Yeah, thank you for clarifying and clarifying that. My perspective from having lived here kind of on and off for the past 5-6 years, is that there are a lot of outages because of tree branches falling, and they do last a while, and that does take, that takes a lot of work to fix, and it's very problematic. Most of us don't have backup energy. So I think there is a reason to prioritize energy locally, specifically. I think that as long as there's an indication that we value trees, which I think we do, and there's like a lot of different ways, right? I mean, we're like a tree city, and we have a lot of protections and emphasis on valuing trees. Maybe we don't need it in this specific point, right? I mean, if it is blocking the energy companies from being able to do the work that they need to do, establishing that value in the comprehensive plan, then yeah, maybe we do need to look at allowing utilities to be the priority, just because it is a problem here. I mean, yeah.
So so Robert and then Kieran, so I mean, and Spencer, so we've heard very, very strongly from the members of the community that trees. And little anecdote here, a week and a half ago, we had one of the longest power outages we've ever had in my neighborhood because of 2 underground transformers. Had nothing to
Yes,
do with it.
yes.
Okay, so there's a maintenance issue.
Yeah.
So I don't know if Spencer or Robert was first. I'm gonna start with Robert.
I also think that we're talking about two different things. A lot of the comments when I was reading them and they were talking about trees, it was areas that are not developed yet, that they're afraid are gonna be wiped off completely, 0 trees are going up and 100 cookie cutter houses are gonna be put in. And so like, I know we're talking about trees, but I think we're talking about trees in 2 different capacities, right? One is like a maintenance and beautification from an energy perspective is important. And I think the others is trying to figure out how to, I don't know if we talk about or we can point to the preservation of some of our tree areas, like, right, we have this wonderful donated large swath of land now that will hopefully slowly now because of the parks, but hopefully will continue to be developed in a way that retains those trees in their glory in the way that the city, the residents of Lacey want. So I do think it's two different trees, even though we're talking about trees in general.
And I will say really quickly that definitely we got all of those comments. There wasn't a whole lot of contrasting comments to that. That was pretty consistent feedback. So I think that a lot of that we can pretty easily address.
Yeah.
The area of contrasting comments where we did get kind of comments from both sides had a little bit more to do with these utility corridors.
Okay.
So absolutely correct, but I think just as staff, those were pretty easy ones to respond to. Because we did have language in there and we can bolster that, and it is a consistent voice asking for the same thing. This one is a little bit more unique because we did, have both sides of that. So WDFW is in there, Olympia Master Builders is in there, PSE is in there, communities in there all the time, also kind of vying for both sides of the utility corridor component. So I guess that's why we're kind of recentering on that one if possible.
Kieran?
Yeah, I was just thinking about, how important the trees are and preserving them. And I understand that not every lot is favorable to, having the trees of a certain height because of its location near power lines. But I think that planning responsibly with the trees, the guides that we have from the city, what trees can be planted where, and the guidelines about not topping trees and how to properly care for it. I mean, I think we spent several months on how to plant trees and how large the root ball and everything. So I think there's already a lot of code, in there. But I've also been in a place where we didn't have electricity for 10 days during a winter storm, and not having electricity for 10 days in the middle of winter that could be life threatening.
Yep.
So it's a hard one to put that balance, but I think that having those trees are definitely something that keep us healthy and happy and in a thriving part of community. So.
Spencer, put your hand out.
Yeah, Tyrion said what I was going to say. Thank you.
Sorry. So, but I don't think the level of instruction that PSE is suggesting belongs in the comp plan. That belongs in an ordinance.
So what we can do is we can work on some high level language that covers some of this, and talks about, enforcing and maybe educating, proper pruning standards in the right of way. I think there's part of that we can take away that would maybe soften some of the language that we currently have, especially in the utilities element where, it basically says, as a last resort in an emergency situation, then you can prune, but otherwise, you need to be hands off. Is that, we need to probably adjust some of that language and balance it out a little bit more and recognize the needs of retaining trees, but also pruning for utility stability or whatever you want to call it.
Okay.
All right. Here. This one, so we did receive, I've referenced this already, but quite a few comments from the Olympia Master Builders. They took time with all of our different elements and provided a lot of feedback. But they did include some specific details for the land use section. Right now within the land use section, we have a goal of proactively implement and specifically explore public, I did read this one earlier, partnerships, proactively solicit development partners and employ public-private partnerships to implement priority projects. And in that area, they provided a comment that listed these other types of things that could potentially be done to further bolster that. So these things include streamline approval for infill, mixed use and middle housing types in areas with infrastructure, apply flexibility in commercial design and public realm standards to reduce barriers for small scale. I crossed out developers and said businesses, because this is Olympia Master Builders, so they do have kind of a pretty centric view on what they're talking about, but to make it more general, use performance-based tools, example, tree credits, form-based code, to balance environmental and development goals. And then prioritize annexation and sub-area planning that opens new land supply for homes across income spectrums.
So go back to the language you've already got.
Yeah, so right now we only actually have a goal that says essentially proactively implement the land use section, and then it has the one policy underneath it that's exploring public-private partnerships. But a lot of this language seems to at least align with supporting the business community in the land use element. So I don't know if there's thoughts, feedback on that. Any
Yeah, I
ideas?
think those comments belong more in an implementation ordinance rather than in the comp plan.
Mhm.
My comment was, I don't think we should have a situation where they try to weaken or undermine already well-defined
Yes,
criteria
Mhm.
that have been thoughtfully included somewhere else.
right.
So that was my reaction to that.
You know, and I think Lacey is somewhat unique, and they may have made these comments for other jurisdictions as well as, you know, for us, a lot of these things that they're talking about, like approvals and, you know, we already have form-based codes in certain areas and the development standards and those kinds of things are not necessarily a barrier to development, where they might be in some of our neighboring jurisdictions, right? Where maybe it takes you a lot longer to get a permit that, you know,
Yes.
the Olympia or the county, not to pick on them, but
No.
So some of this is already kind of built into our process already and maybe, you know, we can reinforce it through the comp plan at a very high level, but we don't necessarily need to come up with the specifics at this point because it's not really an issue. It's not a huge barrier for us at this point. At least that's the impression we have as staff, you know, implementing these things is that, you know, we make it pretty easy here as a community to be able to do some of these things.
Don't you have that expression that it's everything but the shovel in the ground?
Right?
We do everything but swing the hammer. That's the other one. Yeah.
Just to swing the hammer too. Any other thoughts, feedback on this one? No. Okay, keep moving then. All right, so 4 is one that this is the question that we did take to council last night. But we'd also love to hear your thoughts on it. So within the Thurston Climate Mitigation Plan, there is language that is generally in alignment with what's in our comprehensive plan. But in the TCMP, they use more, sorry, I'll
Let's
scroll.
go over to that.
There we go. They use more prescriptive language, so they say kind of things of you shall, or you must, or you will. Use that kind of language within the TCMP, which I will say that Lacey has adopted. Within our documents and in our draft language, we use more language of the encourage or consider or support. So this comment showed up a couple different times within the document, asking to be both consistent with the TCMP, but also use that more kind of active language when we're describing these types of things. I don't know, Ryan, if you have any other things to add to that.
Yeah, so you know, so as Hans mentioned, we have some already adopted plans that have stronger language than what some of our language is in the comprehensive plan. We took this to council last night and asked them kind of where do they want to land on this? Because they've previously told us that they want to be as flexible as possible and the language should be somewhat soft and accepting because it gives us ultimate flexibility. It doesn't, you know, we can do as much or as little as what we want. The council came out, I'll say, kind of on both sides of this and really didn't provide us a lot of direction. We had some council members on one side that said, well, especially when it comes to the Thurston Climate Mitigation Plan, we are behind. We are not doing enough to meet our targets. So therefore we should use language like require and those kinds of things. We should be more mandating when it comes to that. And then we had on the other side, we had people saying, no, we want to use the carrot, not the stick. And so we want to make sure that we're encouraging and supporting and not requiring. And then we had other council members that were somewhere in the middle. So we didn't get a firm direction on this one way or the other. So I wanted to bring it to the planning commission as well and kind of, you know, get your take on it, especially where we've already adopted these plans that have this language in it. Should we echo that language that's in there, or should we again be a little bit more kind of softer and a little bit more, you know, kind of supporting rather than mandating? So that's the question.
Yeah, my immediate opinion on that is to maintain less prescriptive language for the comp plan and to reiterate that it is strategic and pulled out, zoomed out. Yeah, that's my opinion.
I agree with that. You know, I mean, there's nothing worse than being out there in the field and talking to somebody. Yeah, they made me spend $15,000 on solar panels. You see these 120-foot trees around my house? You know, I could have gone geothermal for that $15,000. Yeah, no.
Yes, what is the specific language that was in there? Cause we're seeing like a snippet of it, consider is not the language, but what was the actual statement within the
I think
comment?
Hans would work on bringing that up.
See if I can actually do this. I just lost you guys.
This
on my
was,
side.
I think related to a comment around green building. Is that right? Hans?
Pretty specific.
Yeah, I can read it, but I'd rather,
Glad to find it.
yeah, rather show it to you guys than tell you what it said. Alright, see if we can do this. There it is. So this is actually the slide that we rolled out to city council last night. I'll see if I can go full screen on that. So same general summary at the top, but policy G2A says consider prioritizing the use of lower carbon building materials in new construction and building retrofits to reduce embodied carbon. And then two examples within the TCMP where they use more stronger language, yeah. So require that new and local government facilities and other public buildings demonstrate green building technologies and practices. So, I mean, it's still the TCMP has language like demonstrate, and they don't say specifically exactly what you have to do and not do. But it does use those more prescriptive words in the language. So I guess the question is twofold. One, when we do have documents that are already previously adopted that use this more prescriptive language, what do we do in those instances? And then as a general comprehensive plan approach in other areas like maybe just transportation or economic development, when we're also trying to support or encourage other activities, but we don't necessarily have that other adopted document to go along with it. We don't have to necessarily implement the same strategy in both instances. That's another way we could tackle that.
And we said initially, we said encourage, is that what we said?
Right now, the draft language says consider.
Consider.
Is the word choice.
What about develop the prioritization of, if you're there, it says that you're working towards that plan and having lower carbon building materials is vague enough. That it's not mandating that someone does put, solar panels under, 150-foot trees, so.
Right.
But if you're developing that prioritization, it's establishing that we need to do this, but it's a work in progress. As opposed to, it's too much. Yeah.
It's a hand is up too.
Robert?
I just think, again, when I think about how long of a time frame the comprehensive plan is supposed to go for, what I fear is even if we do have a document, like in this instance, the TRPC, right? Or no,
Climate
mitigation.
climate mitigation, sorry, wrong one. TCMP, there we go. That could change, right, in theory, between now and the end of the comprehensive plan. And so if it does, then our comprehensive plan is not in sync, where if we use broader language guidance in the general direction and then use it kind of goes back to what Jeff was saying earlier about like some of these things are more policy based, but this is more like it is in line, and I think it's close in line, but it gives us enough flexibility where if there was a change to the mitigation plan for some reason, we could still be in line with it.
Elliot?
So do we want to prioritize affordable homes, or do we want to prioritize green building standards? So everybody keeps asking for affordable homes, across the way from me, I sold that lot and, cause I didn't wanna build the house. I'm glad I didn't, cause it was, now he has solar panels sitting on surrounded by tall trees. Um, He has all kinds of green credits to be able to try to make it to have gas. Uh, and he's gonna sell the house for 650,000, which wasn't on my radar, but you know, in a general area of homes that were sold for 360 just 4 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm kind of along those lines. I don't want to put language in here that gets in the way of the call for
Innovation.
rapid housing development.
There were similar comments to Elliot's made last night at the council as well, and it's like, you know, at some point you have to make sure that we keep things in balance and by doing things that require and other things that kind of pins you into a corner as far as some of these things go. So what I'm hearing, and maybe the way we can address this as staff, is that I'm hearing that at the comp plan, the broad level, we still have that broad language. There may be other plans that we've adopted that it has a little bit more narrow language, and that's fine, but at the comp plan level, we stay relatively high. But what I've also heard is that the word consider maybe isn't the best word.
Yeah, it could be a better word.
And so maybe what we can do, Hans, is go through and just kind of scrub policies for the word like consider, because consider is not necessarily committing to anything.
Yeah, I thought about it.
And no, yeah,
Yeah. Is that we actually maybe find a word or something to replace that's going to be, well, we will still have the intent of it being relatively high level and broad. It's not just
Assess.
going to be,
Yeah,
assess, that's a
Assess.
good word. You know, but consider is maybe just a little too
Little
vague.
a
wishy-washy.
little bit, yeah.
And I think that's where maybe some of the council members were getting stuck as well. Maybe we talked about this last night as like, well, now we need to kind of thread the needle to make sure that we're, you know, the kind of wordsmithing this right, is that maybe part of that is getting word of like consider or those kinds of things that are almost just kind of like, I don't want to say, it feels a little bit kind of like throwaway. It's kind of like, well, we thought about it, but we're not gonna do it.
Right, exactly.
yeah, evaluate, assess, something that just a little more teeth.
Yeah.
Yep.
Alright, cool. Moving on to the next one here. I think these are, okay, yeah, these two are related. So, this grouping had to do with, the interaction between, warehouses and residences or semi-trucks and residences. This showed up in a couple different, of the elements, so a little bit in economic development, a little bit in transportation, a little bit in land use. But this is a common theme that we've heard, especially in the Hawks Prairie area, the north side of the freeway. Both in the comprehensive plan process, but also just in the community and when we're doing other projects as well. It's a pretty common one that comes up. So we do have some language, and I did copy both of those draft policies that do speak to that. But I did also just want to open it up to the group because it is something that we hear about a lot, and see if there's any additional feedback there, or anything else that we can do to address that within the context of the comprehensive plan. So within our economic development section, we have prioritize availability of adequate and reliable housing, public facilities, and infrastructure to promote economic growth and activity. And then in our transportation section, we have address conflicts caused by the growth of freight movement into and out of industrial areas by implementing appropriate transportation infrastructure and travel demand management strategies. So two different examples of generally speaking to that situation that we have as draft language right now, but any other feedback that you guys have
So
would be good.
how much of that comment comes from the misunderstanding on the part of the public that roundabouts are built specifically with that curbing to accommodate long trailers,
I agree.
while at the same time directing traffic of
Away from.
cars?
Yeah, I would, just from using the roundabouts frequently, I agree with you. I think there is a misunderstanding of how they should function.
That's why they have that low curb.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah,
You wanna go back to that comment there, Hans? It might be helpful. So there's. Yeah, the comment is, we would see semi truck drivers haphazardly drive over curbs or medians.
Right.
Um,
They misunderstand exactly what you were saying.
A wave it.
So what I don't understand from this comment is, are they talking about where they live now or where they used to live?
It sounds like used to.
maybe,
Because if they're commenting on where they used to live, then I don't understand the context for the roundabout.
because it says, let's see, we moved to a city where there were no roundabouts, stop signs and traffic signals were used instead, even on 4 or 6 lane streets, we would see semi trucks haphazardly. So they would see that maybe in their old place.
Yeah.
So that sounds like
And then they
before.
go on to say, well, but maybe require smaller trucks. I don't,
Would the,
not that the city can't do that, right? Yeah.
would the comprehensive plan be a venue for something like encouraging the education of roundabout usage to the public? Is that something that would be in a comprehensive plan or not? I don't know.
How much more?
I know, right? Yeah, so I don't know if that's, yeah.
It is.
But I mean, it's useful, super, it would be great. I think that would be a great thing to have somehow. I just don't know if that belongs in a comp plan to have that education piece or.
You know, the thing that, and this is specifically talking about trucks, is that truck drivers come from across the nation, across, they're international, they come from Canada, they come from, you know, everywhere. And they come to our community, they deliver their freight and then they move on. And so even having education, you know, local residents, you know, people that go through there every day, that's great. But what's not gonna happen is we're not gonna get the truck driver that's coming from California or the East Coast or Canada that's gonna watch a video that we've got on our
You're right,
website, or,
yeah.
So,
you know,
yeah.
we're pushing through Facebook, so.
Well, and what I would say is that commercial truck drivers are trained on how to use a roundabout. Specifically with a 53-foot trailer behind them or a double
Yeah, right.
40-foot, right? They are more well-educated than the rest of us on how to use those roundabouts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think what you were saying though too, is that maybe this commenter, for example, sees the truck drivers using it appropriately, actually, but to their eyes, it doesn't look like
Exactly.
appropriate
Yeah,
usage.
yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
So
and
maybe it would
there's
be-
frustration, you know, anybody that's driven through there knows that, you know, a truck's taking both lanes, you know, you gotta slow down and let it go through. And I think that, you know, people get frustrated that they have to slow down and wait for a truck to go through there. And there's inherent conflicts in the truck versus, you know, the single vehicle that's trying to get through there. And I'm not exactly sure, obviously, we're not gonna be able to address that in the comp plan, but it is something that comes up quite often when we go out to the community and, you know, they say, hey, what are you guys doing about the truck traffic? They don't say anything about the car traffic necessarily, it's more about the trucks, like, well,
Right.
it'd be great if we could, you know, put them somewhere else, but we have an area of our city that's designed and developed for light industrial, and unfortunately, most of the residential is beyond the industrial, so you have to drive in tandem or in conjunction with the trucks to be able to get to where you live.
And let's not forget that whole Meridian campus area was designed for the promise of an interchange at Meridian Road that the state backed out on. In fact, Home Depot and Target spent $28 million on Orion Drive there specifically in anticipation of that interchange. Yeah. Robert and then Judy.
I was just gonna say, I think a lot of it has to do with just people not really remembering that roundabouts are replacing intersections. And so I think people have this idea that like, I can drive through this at full speed.
Right.
Like, good God, like, no, it replaced like a traffic light at one point, right? And so you do need to just, I think it's a lot of to do with, you know, the increase in roundabouts for some generations and just some people who are not familiar with them, like they're still trying to figure it out. And if they don't live on that part of town, you can get by without going through a roundabout in some places in the city now,
Yes.
right? But like, I know it's just hard, I guess.
It's still
for some
new.
people, yeah.
Judy?
My observation is that there are a lot of complaints about the trucks, but what they're forgetting is the other part of the quality of life that brings. They get their Amazon packages in 12 hours. They get
Right.
well-stocked grocery stores on every corner, and it's a trade-off. That's just the reality of it, so.
Yeah, so we've veered way off what we should be talking about. So let's get back on track.
Can I make a comment even though I'm not on the commission?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Certainly.
Sorry. Another thing that I think of in terms of the roundabouts in this specific comment is it does sound more of a, like to put it in a T6 is, it's more of a design, what's the word I'm looking for you guys were using earlier?
Design element?
Yeah, it's more of a design element because there's so much that goes into a roundabout, you know, they do. The circumference of a roundabout is based off of the speed curvature. They need you to
Right.
slow down for that, as Robert was saying, you know, it replaced an intersection. And that truck apron is designed for those trucks, and you have a sight distance, and there's an appeal to just how wide that corner is for you to make that. So there is a lot into that for a roundabout design. So I think it's more of a design aspect in terms of umbrella for the comp plan. It's more of a design.
Yeah, so back on track.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I
We
think.
feel good with what we have in there?
I think so. I think
Yes.
that's.
Yes.
Yep.
Cool. And then I think this is actually the last one that we've called out. So again, this is from Olympia Master Builders. They included, and this has to do with utilities. They included language that says emphasize service readiness in infill and annexation areas. Keep developer obligations clear, fair, and proportionate, and support regional utility coordination that reduces permit complexity and review times. I don't have any additional language there, but that is one that came in.
So go back to that again, because I'm trying to, Spencer, go ahead.
Yeah, so when I was reading through, I've noticed a trend of the language that OMB was using. They keep talking about permit speeds and process, which feels a little bit like they may have missed the last legislative session with the new process being forced down the pipeline. So that one kind of falls on deaf ears, and they keep using language to talk about, please don't put roadblocks in our way. And I agree. We should not put roadblocks in their way, but I haven't really seen anything that, especially in this comment, that is something that we could put into our plan.
Yeah, it's just kind of all over the place. Anybody else? Yeah, I don't. Huh.
Let's make life easy for me.
Right? Well, I mean, okay, honestly, anybody that comments on this, that's gonna generally be their perspective.
Right, no, but I
So
mean.
trying to put that in context of what we need to
Right,
do, yeah.
right, it's not fair.
It's reasonable if they're trying to advocate for, yeah, their
Yeah,
interests.
they should be advocating for themselves.
Yeah,
Absolutely,
but that may not get into the comp plan.
right.
Okay.
Elliot?
Just from a perspective as a builder myself, you know, in the past, it was very frustrating. And I saw the same frustration with the builder who just built the house across from me that I sold the land on. You know, he had one zinger after another thrown at him. That's frustrating. And, you know, the legislative session came up with that law for a reason because of the frustration of builders. So I think it was a good law. It kind of added a lot of burden on the city, and I understand that. But what they're reflecting is the past, I agree. But you know, in the meantime, I can go over later on what the roadblocks were that the builder had. I mean, we have kind of a disconnect between building department and the builders and their frustrations.
So I'm not sure, like, where they're talking about emphasize service readiness. I mean, that asks us to anticipate what density is zoning is gonna be in 10 years, and we can't do that. Because that would actually require us to say, oh, well, you've gotta be able to serve this many people, right, to whatever utility it is. Keep developer obligations clear, fair, and proportionate, and I don't know That one seems overly broad to me or real broad to me. I don't know what they're referring to in that, because I thought, especially Lacey design and development regulations are pretty clear. I mean, I've always heard forever that Lacey is the easiest
Easy to do
community in this area to develop in, so I'm not sure.
That would be true. You know, we definitely prefer building in Lacey versus Olympia versus Tacoma versus, God forbid, Seattle. But most builders have like me have simply moved into Lewis County because they have a far better building process. You know, I suppose the biggest complaints that I've seen is I'm not building anymore. Thankfully, I'm retired. The state put me out of business, but with their new law saying I can't subcontract. But it's frustrating for builders. It really is. You know, we were constantly asking for low cost housing and they keep coming up with these new laws.
So Elliot, how do we address that here?
I would say have more of an in touch with the builders themselves. You know, invite the builders as an open house to talk directly with builders.
But is that a comp plan responsibility?
I think having their input, you know, Olympia Master Builders, that they're, you know, they get a lot of the guff from both developers and builders, and a lot of what they get is down the line stuff versus builders currently building.
But I think that would be more of an open house, maybe planning and economic development would have versus something we're addressing in the comp plan.
Well, doesn't it affect the comp plan if you know what the builders are requesting?
That was this opportunity.
Well, that was
That's
this
what this is.
opportunity here.
Yeah, that's
Are
where
you asking for the possibility of reopening public comment?
Well, directly with the builders themselves. They're the ones that drive a lot of the economy.
But they had their
Yeah,
opportunity.
that's what this is.
As a public comment, which is kind of drowned in the noise.
So I will also say that Vanessa, who's our director, went to Olympia Master Builders event while we had public comment live and running, and updated them on this process and invited them to participate. And I think the result of that was largely the comments that we do see captured within this process that we're running through. And there are many more comments
Yeah.
from Olympia Master Builders throughout the entirety that we're not highlighting, but these are the ones that as staff weren't really necessarily easy decisions one way or the other. So that's why we're seeking that additional feedback. So at least in the conversations that I've had with the Olympia Master Builders and the efforts that we've done, their opportunity to participate wasn't really identified as a concern as part of this process.
So maybe we can use other discussions around housing or those kinds of things, you know, in the future as the ability to, you know, bring them in. I think that might be the.
That would be my suggestion.
Yeah.
And maybe if, you know, some of their concerns need to be looked at for revising, you know, city code or something like that.
Yeah, and we are working through that middle housing process, which, you know, that's going to be really, you know, and so that's going to open up more lots to duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, but also ADUs as well. Those are buildings that are usually built by our small local builders that, you know, the Olympia Master Builders represent. So maybe that would be an opportunity to bring them in and talk about some of the challenges associated with that, or, you know, and or development in general. You know, just having 20 years of experience here, you know, pretty much every Olympia Master Builders meeting I've ever been in is they are highly supportive of what the city of Lacey does. You know,
Yes.
they appreciate that we are one of the first ones if we're, you know, thinking about looking at new regulations, looking at a new comp plan. They are always very open and receptive and thankful that we've come to them for their input. So, you know, we can maybe continue that discussion through other avenues. And, you know, they definitely put in a lot of effort into their comments in the comp plan, and it's, you know, shown in the comments.
Yeah, I mean, I've always heard from local development community and local builders that they really enjoy doing business with Lacey. It's, yeah,
It's easier to do.
okay.
Well, that concludes the ones that we've highlighted. But we did want to turn it over to you guys if there are any others that you wanted to discuss, any other things that you wanted us to think about specifically. Just kind of as an open opportunity.
So what I want to say to you all, and I wish Tanya was here. I really genuinely appreciate all of you and what you have gotten us to at this point, because every single one of you has showed the passion you have for our community and our citizens. And I'm really proud to be a part of that and a part of this commission. So thank you all very, very much.
Thank you.
Anything else? So we've got 54 pages or whatever. There's probably at least one or two that you might have a question or a comment on.
There was a lot of great ideas, like having the city create plans like they have for ADUs for smaller houses and other things. But I mean, we might end up with a lot of houses, look, I don't know if that, would be terribly different, but I thought it was just really interesting, that people gave a lot of feedback and there was a lot of thought to the feedback that in the comments to understand issues that are, impacting the city. And so I think that it was very nice. It might have been easier if the questions were kind of linked so you could go back, but I had initially read from the comment page, so you could actually click on people's links and see the comments right there. So it was like a refresher, and I saw so many more comments being added after the first time I looked, so that's a blessing.
So what I saw in a lot of the comments was like some of what we said here, a lot of the comments were more appropriate to develop at the ordinance or code level
Yeah,
rather than the comp plan level.
absolutely. Yep. Yep, and we recognize that, and if you go through and see like, that we reviewed and didn't need to address something, that's usually the reason why.
Right.
Was that because, or one of the reasons why is because of the level of specificity.
Right.
While maybe a good idea or something, like that, yeah, it was a little too far in the weeds to be able to include in a comp plan.
Oh, yeah, there were a lot of great ideas, fantastic ideas in
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Judy?
I actually wanted to compliment the process because, we're kind of in this and hearing our updates, but you made this so transparent and so accessible at so many levels and venues that I don't think anyone can feel left out
Yes.
of the community or stakeholders in this. So I really do want to compliment the process you took with this.
Yeah, really, it's a lot of hard work, but it's really good.
It has been.
And I think it even the comments that weren't necessarily perfect fits for the comprehensive plan are still informing the people behind it, all of the
Yes.
planners, so it's great. Yeah, I think it's great how many people participated, and I agree. It seemed like
Yeah.
everybody could who wanted to.
So I want to thank to the city staff, Brian and Scott Egger and Vanessa, because you guys put in a lot of frickin' work. And I know there were probably a lot of times where you're going, crap, it's 5 o'clock. But I appreciate the information you gave to us, because I feel like we've made decisions based on comprehensive information. No pun intended. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
It was really good process.
All right, future schedule?
Yeah, so we'll have a next meeting in 2 weeks, so that'll be August the 27th. The next, at this point, the only thing on the agenda will be a briefing on the development procedures. So we had an initial briefing with Shannon Vincent on our staff that went over just a very high level, like, hey, we're looking at taking stuff that's in the development guidelines and putting them into the Lacey Municipal Code. At this time, we've by August 27th, we'll have finished that draft. It'll be available for your review. And so we'll go into the details on that and then set a future public hearing on that. So August 27th, unfortunately, I won't be here. Sarah Schelling will be sitting in to kind of take my spot. She oversees the current planning side. And then we'll have Shannon Vincent here. So it'll be kind of actually the current planning side of the house for once and not just us long range planners. So that'll be great. After that, our schedule, I'll say as we get into September, we'll get a little bit fluid at this point. I know Jeff, you're gone September.
Yeah, I would
24th.
like to have that public hearing in the first meeting in September.
That may not be possible given our timelines at this point, so stay tuned. We know that September 24th isn't a good date, so we'll keep that in mind as we move forward. Like I said, at the very beginning is we've got a lot of moving pieces and parts that have to align between now and then, to make this thing happen. And so, that may be a little aggressive at this point. It may be, I don't want to promise anything at this point, but we could be moving that back a little bit, so.
Okay.
I have a question. Is there any opportunity for a tour at all?
Oh, like a bus tour. We are not doing a bus tour this year, but we are doing a self-guided tour. So we're putting together basically a map and the associated documents that go along with it, the site plans, the renderings and those kinds of things, so that you can actually go and do the tour yourself.
Thank you.
So will that have Rick narrating?
Yeah.
And audio?
It's so
too
funny you
for
brought that
this?
up. That's the first thing we thought of. Yeah. So we should do this as an audio tour and you just hit the thing on your phone and you're like, okay, here we go.
Exhibit number 45.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you're going to the museum and you.
Yeah,
put in your
really.
keys.
Right.
Unfortunately, no.
Oh.
It'll be a paper tour, so yeah, you'll have to, stop and look at it yourself and.
I have to
you know,
speak
That's
for
perfect.
myself,
But yeah, so we just didn't have the capacity this year to be able to do the tour. I know that the planning commission, the council too really enjoys it, so hopefully next summer.
Yes,
we'll be able to-
actually, I've been thinking about that lately.
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
usually the time of year that we do that tour. There's just so much going on from a department perspective and, from getting the comprehensive plan, together and all that stuff. But just timing wise didn't work out very well.
But that other approach sounds wonderful. I
It
just really
does.
I wanna take that time to see
To
all
look
the
at something,
places,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Every time I go out, there's
And you
something
won't have to
completely new. It's amazing.
it's amazing. Yeah. Even working here, I just don't get out of the office enough. I enjoy the tour too, because I always kind of learn something as well, so.
Yeah. All right, well, I'm gonna adjourn this meeting. Thank you all.
Thank
See
you.
you all in 2 weeks.